Okay, Scotty, so I'm recording. Tell me about the weird anomaly that you've had happen.
Well, the other day, I was at home, and I went to open one of the casement windows that has the crank, at the bottom.
Right.
And the crank handle was missing.
Okay.
So we thought, well, that's strange, that maybe the cat has knocked it off, or maybe the blinds had knocked it off when the wind blew moved the blinds and the wind blew it. But I looked all over the floor, and I couldn't find it, and I looked under the couch, and we looked all around. It would have dropped straight down. It's pretty heavy, right? So it was not on the floor. It wasn't anywhere. It was like, well, where the hell did it go? So forgot about it. Went on with our day, and Kim had gone over to the other window on the other side of the room, taken the crank off, and walked over and used that crank to crank the window open.
Right. We've all done that on all our windows, right?
Right. So there was just like, if the crank's missing, you just use a different crank, right?
Right, they're all the same.
So she left it on that window and opened all the other windows, and, life goes on. And then the next morning, she went back to the original window to take open the window. Then she took the crank off, and she went back over to the other side of the room where the other window was, where she took the crank off.
Right.
All the cranks were on.
Yeah, so this is kind of got to do with merging and separate timelines and all that kind of stuff.
It was so strange because we looked all over for the crank and it was missing. So she took the one off the window across the room, and then when she went to put it back the next day, it was there. They were all there.
Okay, so in other words, there were no missing cranks now.
It reappeared on the other side of the room.
Okay, so now there was no missing cranks. Every window had a crank.
Yep, and it's not like we found it and picked it up off the floor or somebody else was in the house or anything like that. Because I was the one who originally discovered it missing. So I went to work, and the next day, Kim was the only one home, and she discovered it had been replaced.
Well, that's really odd, and all I can say is that, starting in the 1950s, scientists at the leading and top universities have theorized this multiverse or this multi-universe theory where we exist on many different timelines and many different universes, and many of them are all the same. Some are a little bit different, some are a lot different, and some are slightly ahead, some are slightly behind, some are a lot ahead, and some are a lot behind. So, and you can actually transfer from one to another. I mean, it's weird, and they overlap. Some of them touch, some of them overlap, some of them overlap a lot. So,
or some of them would be like waves, where the waves intersect at certain points.
Exactly. And somehow you guys have gone from one timeline to another.
Yep.
So,
that's so weird.
Yeah, if you search on Google, you'll see that there's all kinds of stories like this. The classic one that I use to explain to people is where a lady goes into Walmart and a blouse that she likes is available in many different colors, and she doesn't know which one to get. It could be red or blue or yellow or green. She likes them all. Specifically, the red and green ones, she doesn't know which one to get because she likes them equally. So, okay, she buys the red one and gets up to the counter, buys it, gets put in the bag, gets home, and guess what? It's not the red one, it's the green one in the bag.
Right.
And now most people will just explain it away and say, oh, I must have grabbed the wrong one at the last second, or the clerk put the wrong one in the bag, and they just slough it off like that. Well, somehow, because, at any given time there's many choices we can make, somehow they got onto the other timeline. So we don't know how it happens, but there's tons of stories like that. And, we've had these things happen many times now in the last 3.5 years. The big one being the one with the check, and but there's been some smaller ones too. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Do you think that could also explain maybe deja vu?
Yes, many people say that when you have deja vu, it's got something to do with these intersecting timelines, these multiple universes, and yes, you have been there before in another timeline that's running way ahead, and so when you're on the other timeline, you have maybe a conscious or an unconscious memory of being there already. So, it's really hard to say. I don't know. All I can say is the more we go in this whole phenomenon, the more I'm not surprised, the more I'm just, we've come across a lot of strange things. And the truth is the world is actually, the real world is different than we actually picture it as.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of space between the molecules, right?
Totally.
From the Big Bang, the whole universe was in something the size of a golf ball to start with, right?
Exactly. So let me just stop the recorder here.